What does it mean? And I guess shoot the shit like we normally do, but also talk about Boston. What brings these people or keeps them here? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the secret amongst musicians is oftentimes the audience is more entertaining than the band.
Hey everybody, I'm Michael Prentke, and this is the Bos Bones podcast. And today I have a very special guest, not only because he's a premier Boston trombonist, but also one of my best friends. This is Mr. Brian Paulding, Dorcas Morton. Hey.
Hey,
So,
Michael, good to see you.
yeah, I'm excited to have you here, and we can shoot the shit like we normally do, but also talk about Boston and what it means to you. So I obviously we know each other, but for those who are listening and don't know you, could you talk a little bit about where you grew up?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up on Cape Cod, so I spent my whole until I came to Boston for Berkeley at 18. I grew up on Cape Cod in Yarmouth, so sort of like right in the middle of Cape Cod.
And again, because we know each other, it's feels a little bit funny, but I want to ask questions because I know you, and I know that you've been
Of course.
involved with the reggae and Caribbean music scene from a very young age. Could you talk a little bit about that and the kind of intersection of
Yeah,
like
sure.
Caribbean music and the Cape and your upbringing?
Yes, absolutely. So, I started playing with a band called Shango Axe on Cape Cod when I was I think a sophomore, maybe a junior in high school. It was all older guys and me. I just sort of kind of wedged a foot in the door and wouldn't go away. So every Thursday night, once I got my license, every Thursday night I'd go to this seedy bar, and I think it was in Barnstable, and the band had a weekly Thursday night there, so I would go, but I could only play first set because I had to be home by midnight for the restrictions on my license. So I did that for a year. Luckily, my parents they were fine with it. As long as I'd get my ass out of bed on a Friday morning and get to school on time, they were cool with it. And that band was led by a brilliant musician who's sort of been a musical mentor to me in the scene over the years, named Michael Gabriel. He's a master steel pan player and singer and just all around entertainer.
Sure.
Trinidadian guy. He's incredible. And that was also sort of my link to the Boston reggae scene at an early age. We'd come up and play Bill's Bar back in the day on Lansdowne Street.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those old dub station events. And that was sort of the link that I met a lot of the Boston reggae scene. Shango Axe, we'd have subs come in if people from the band weren't available. So we'd have people like, at 16, I was playing with Glenn Grant and Taliwa Thomas on drum and bass, and sort of met all those guys that way. And Yusaku Yoshimura playing keys with us. So it's that was sort of my link into the scene up here. So it was kind of a smooth transition once I moved up here for college in 2008, I guess.
Right. I was just about to say, so when you, not to date you or anything, but I am curious about sort of, I'm curious about like the kind of timeline of things because of, I guess, my own personal experience with the Boston music scene and seeing, I guess, like whether it's kind of like growing or shrinking or kind of plateauing or like what does it mean? And I guess you were pretty deeply connected with the reggae scene, like you were saying, like 2006, 7, 8. What's it been like kind of watching the reggae scene for the past like 15 years or so?
I mean, I'm not sure I could place it into either growing or shrinking or plateauing. It's just always changing. Things are always changing, but also there are things that stay constant in it. Um, so things have morphed over the years, especially in terms of the saddest part to me, the most decline, I guess, is in the venues that are around, especially now during pandemics times. We've seen the close of Bull McCabe's, which was sort of the center of that scene for at least the last maybe 5 years,
Sure.
maybe longer. So a lot of the venues that I started by playing in, like Bill's Bar, Western Front in Cambridge, which was
Yeah.
the scene, the sort of the hub of the scene. Really, before I came to Boston, I sort of saw it in its waning days and played there. But a lot of the venues are closing. There's always, Boston's a unique music city in that there's a constant sort of turnover of amazing young musicians, uh, which has major benefits to it and also makes Boston a sort of unique scene for professional musicians because there are so many like 18-year-old kids that can play circles around me that just want to play. Uh, so it's, I don't know. I'm not sure I can see any like very clean narratives throughout the whole thing. It things shift. There's still sort of like a core of people that are fixtures in the scene that have been here and will be here, sort of as things change. People like Taliwa or until Glenn's passing, Glenn or
Hmm.
Van Martin, Toussaint. There's a hub of people that are that have been in it for a long time, and I don't see them going anywhere.
Hmm. What What do you think? Why are those fixtures there? Like, why? What brings these people or keeps them here?
I mean, at a certain time, at a certain point, this is just the place that you have your life. You know, it takes more to leave than it does to stay. Maybe. I mean, it's a beautiful community too. Like, I think. I mean, I don't know. Everyone probably has their own reasons of why they're in Boston. I'm not sure that there's like a singular reason to assign to everybody. But I mean, it's a beautiful city and a beautiful community. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. What are What are some of the other fixtures of the scene? You talked about Bill's Bar and Bull McCabe's. Any other spots that you've really enjoyed playing in town?
Oh, favorite spot. I mean, Bowls, just from a community aspect, Bowls is my favorite spot. Um, I love it. Like any night you go, any night you went there, there was live music. Half of the half of the audience was in bands that would play there. Have a weekly residency. It was just you just knew everyone there, so it's like really kind of a cool scene. Um, I mean, one of my favorite events that I used to play in Boston and haven't in a couple years, but is the Juve Parade in Dorchester right before Carnival. That's
Mm.
that's that was kind of my favorite. Like it was kind of like the one really wild night of the year. You'd go and like party at someone's house, someone that was part of the part of the band or like the bigger, not necessarily the band in terms of musicians, but the band in like the carnival sense of the people that your crew, the people that are with your crew. So you'd go party all night and then you'd build the float at like 3 in the morning and be playing soca music from 7 in the morning to noon or something like that on the back of a trailer going around Dorchester, and then you go to bed when it's all done. That's been like, and that gig was always with. I always played that gig with at least Michael Gabriel and Glenn Grant, so it was usually the three of us on the back of a float. Sometimes this amazing pan player from New York named Earl Brooks Jr. would come up and play. And it was also sort of just like it's one of the things I love. Things are so open to, the scene's kind of like family. So if someone shows up, it's hey, come play.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think that gig has a real special place in my heart.
Yeah. So aside from COVID, that's been happening this whole time up until now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I mean, I don't. It didn't happen this summer, but
Right.
yeah, it happens every year. I think it's the weekend before Labor Day, because Labor Day is the big one in Brooklyn. So they try and stagger out the carnivals throughout the region because there's a lot of people that go to a bunch of them.
Yeah. Um, one thing that you mentioned before, and that one of my previous guests, Jed Bishop, was also talking about, and something that I've certainly experienced was the lack of venues. Can you talk about what that's meant for you as a musician?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it makes it a little challenging. I mean, it's not like a New York City or it's not like a New Orleans where there's like live music in almost any door you go behind, right? I mean, that's obviously not all of New York City. It's certain parts that kind of is all of New Orleans. Um, I mean, it makes it, there's not as yeah, I mean, I didn't see it as like a real acute scare until COVID hit. And now it's very concerning to me of like when live music comes back, where are we all going to play? I mean, um, especially these more sort of community hang spaces, almost like a Bulls, or like even before my time in Boston, it was Matt Murphy's. Um, Places like that seem to be going away. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it's a business filled by a bunch of amazing creative people that are going to figure out ways to make it work.
Yeah. Was Matt Murphy's? I've never heard of that one.
Matt Murphy's was a bar in Brookline that I tried to sneak into when I was 15 and I got kicked. I got rejected. Um, it was like a venue that a lot of the I guess it was probably like the early 2000s. There was a lot of music happening there. A lot of the bands that I really admired as a jam band hippie on Cape Cod were playing there. So yeah, it was a place that I always thought, oh, if only I can go to Matt Murphy's. But by the time I moved up here and would have been old enough to get in anyways, or could have used my trombone as my get in for free pass, uh, it was closed, or it had new ownership or something. It wasn't the scene it used to be.
Who are some of those bands that you were trying to see or play with at Matt Murphy's?
Well, I've been following Tucson for a long time, so and I actually got the opportunity to play with him when I was like 16. He came in and subbed a couple Shango Axe gigs, and I was like pretty starstruck about it. Which now we're friends and have played together many times. Who else was it? Jeez, I don't know. I have to get back to you on that one. But I know I was really trying to see Tucson. Like, I think he had a project with Johnny Trauma at the time. I don't know. It's so long ago. I could be making that up.
Hmm. Maybe we can segue to uh you were starting to tell me some stories the other day and I told you to save them. Some of
Oh
your
god.
favorite and least favorite gigs around town.
Yeah, it's funny how those two things kind of like merge into the same thing. Like with time, some of the it's like I wonder if you feel the same way about this, but I find that it's sort of like I remember maybe 10% of my gigs. And it'll be like there's 5% that are just so amazing and magical and everything's clicking musically and community wise and the audience is great, or it's somehow such a unique circumstance that you remember those. And then there's the 5% at the bottom that are such shit shows that you remember that too. And then that middle 90% is like, yeah, I mean, it was cool. We did what we do. It was fun. No big problems. Like, really not much to report. Um, but yeah, one of my favorite shit show stories was this was what when would this have been? I don't know. Maybe 2012. Right. No, maybe a little later than that. Anyways, doesn't really matter. There was, speaking of venues going away, there was a venue in Union Square called Precinct, and I
Hmm.
was playing at Precinct with a band called the Dis and Dat Band, which is another like reggae, mostly reggae, a little bit of calypso, a little bit of dancehall, but mostly reggae band. They were based out of Revere at the time, and we were playing there, and it was a gig where I was doubling on trombone and keyboards. So Precinct was probably there's a stage at Precinct that's probably I don't know 3 feet off the ground, 4 feet off the ground, something like that. And I was right at the front of the stage. I had a keyboard here and a trombone on a stand next to me, and I was playing trombone, so I had a mic over the keyboard, playing trombone into the mic, and all of a sudden, like it's slow motion, I see this woman who's just plastered, absolutely hammered, just sort of slow motion staggering from the back of the room all the way to the front. She's like, it's this big slow motion fall, and she hits the stage and falls right into my keyboard. So I have the trombone in my right hand. I have a Yamaha keyboard kind of like sort of propped up in my lap, but I didn't have the slide locked, which is an amateur trombone mistake to all the trombone players listening. I'm sure it's happened to people, but it's an amateur mistake, whatever. So I didn't have the slide lock. I'm trying to catch the keyboard, and the slide just falls off the trombone, off the stage into the audience. And I was like, no, fuck this. I'm done. Like, I put the keyboard back on the stand, and then I just got the slide from the audience. You know, security at that time was already up, getting this woman out of, escorting her out of the venue. And then I just brought the whole trombone back into the kitchen for the next couple songs to inspect it and make sure everything was working and okay. And somehow my trombone was totally fine.
Man,
it was no problems. But that one was definitely a memorable night.
Oh man, we've all, I mean, not everybody, but I guess people who play clubs, we've all had our share of moments in clubs where just like really drunk people are doing such ridiculous shit, and I wonder if they know that we're watching them.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the secret amongst musicians is oftentimes the audience is more entertaining than the band. they just don't know that they're the show. But especially, like, you know, I play a lot on the Cape in the summer because there's a lot of venues on the Cape, because there's a lot of tourists on the Cape on vacation that think, oh, I'm near a beach, let's hear some reggae music. So I've played a lot on the Cape too, and the level of drunkenness on the Cape is far exceeds most of what you see in Boston. So I used to actually go to gigs with I don't know if I have it up here, but I used to go to gigs with a small boxing glove. And I would put it on the end of my slide so that if people got too close, because we play all these rooms that just they don't have stages. They just like along one wall is where the band sets up. And often there'd be like some drunk bros or whatever that, you know, they're not people. Trombone's really the only instrument that has like a very three-dimensional profile when you're playing it. Like it grows and shrinks, and people just aren't aware of that or whatever. So I used to always have it in my car, this little boxing glove that if someone got too close, I'd put it on the end of the slide and just give them a little poke with it. Give them a little punch, and they'd always look back. Like sometimes they'd look back real pissed, and then they would see what happened, and every time people thought it was funny. So it was like kind of a good-natured way to be like, hey, watch out.
That's amazing. That's hilarious. Wow. Would you actually play like a full song with the boxing glove on your slide, or you just like kind of pop hit him and then put it off?
Sometimes I'd play a song with it. Sometimes I mean, I played a gig at church. I guess there are a lot of venues that have closed in Boston. Another closed venue in Boston. I played a Halloween show once at church where I
was on that show too.
Wait, were you?
I was playing with Kina Zore. That was like one of my first Kina gigs, and that was probably one of the first times we met or came across each other.
Whoa. And it was like a dub station gig featuring Michael Gabriel. Is that what it was?
Oh, sorry. Maybe it's a different gig, but yeah, not that one.
Wait, what was that one? A Speeches gig?
Yeah, that was an Endangered Speeches gig. That was the End of the World. That was the December 21st. Was it 2011? Whatever the date was, that was supposed to be the apocalypse.
Really?
There. Yeah, it was like the Mayan Aztec apocalypse.
Right.
We played a gig together. I remember I had to hide backstage because they were like, oh, you know, under 21 thing. I wasn't 21. They're going to kick me out.
Oh, wild. Oh my God. So anyways, I played there I played there a Halloween show one time.
Okay.
Where I dressed in all like a full gray sweatsuit and a white headband and put the boxing glove on the trombone for the whole gig. And the rule was every solo I had to find a way to put the Rocky theme in
it. That's hilarious. That's amazing. What a fun challenge.
Yeah, it really sounds bad over certain songs, turns out. But you know, you gotta commit sometimes.
Oh man.
Wow, I didn't realize that we. Yeah, I guess that was one of the first times we met. That was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that gig. I mean, I don't think we met. I remember seeing Speeches briefly. Yeah, it was Speeches and Federator number one and Kina. I think that was the lineup.
Wow,
Kina
that's a good
Torres.
show.
Yeah, it was a fun show. Yeah.
That's a
I
good lineup.
remember I remember being like intimidated as hell hearing Bob Pilkington backstage warming up, just like blaring out some double Fs, just like playing
Oh yeah.
some stupid high notes for no reason. I was just like, oh man, who's this guy? But yeah, that was a fun show. Yeah, another shuttered venue. It's pretty messed up.
Yeah, it is. It sure is.
I don't know if there's a lot to say about it, but I was wondering if you have any, I don't know, thoughts. I was just thinking about how like so many of the venues we've talked about aren't even in Boston technically. Like you were talking about Matt Murphy's in Brookline and the whole Somerville Union Square, like Bull McCabe's scene and other venues there, and so many in Cambridge. When you actually think about Boston venues, there's like really not many. Church was one closed, but like it's it's kind of
Yeah, what
funny.
else? Like Wally's, of course. Like that's like the staple of Boston music in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, there really isn't that many, I guess, huh? There's
as far as like clubs, I mean, I guess you could say like Symphony
Beehive.
Hall. Yeah, Beehive.
Um,
Um, there's like
yeah, there aren't many.
Daryl's Daryl's
Oh
Corner
yeah,
Bar. They're starting to do
I've never
stuff.
been there.
It's a cool restaurant. It's a cool hang. It definitely wasn't intended for music, so the place where bands play is like it's a really small kind of corner. It's a little bit awkward, but it's a cool hang. So that's nice. And there's also Slade's.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah,
right.
there's not
I
many
also
venues.
think that kind of I think that kind of distinction between like Boston, Brookline, Cambridge. I don't know. To me, Boston is anywhere you can get on the T.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I know that's not technically what Boston is, but it's all the
Functionally.
same area.
Yeah. There's House of Blues.
Oh right, yeah. There's right.
Yeah.
There's the whole Lansdowne Street.
Yeah.
But even Lansdowne Street used to have more like Bill's Bar used to be on Lansdowne Street where bands could like local bands could play. It's like
Yeah.
local bands don't really play.
No.
I mean, I guess there's a couple local bands that'll play House of Blues, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah. I wonder what how are we going to get more venues because it seems like they're shuttering faster than they're starting. What do you think?
I don't know. I really wish I had a good answer for that. I mean, I think the reality is they're gonna be further outside of Boston.
Yeah.
Uh, because I think that I mean, not saying super far, but like I could imagine a cool venue going up in Malden or Somerville or Everett or Chelsea. Because I think the reality is Boston is so wildly expensive that it's just like it's going to be hard to get people that want to foster this sort of community, local minded music thing to be able to put in the investment to make it happen. You know.
Yeah. It's kind of funny the way you put it that way because I'm thinking about my own personal experience having lived here and um also like a quip that my partner Celine makes. How like she feels like some of the best parts about living in Boston isn't Boston itself, but the proximity of Boston to other things. And I feel like when you think about like classic Boston downtown, like Newbury Street, Faneuil Hall, or like I don't know, the Common, like I don't ever go down there. I don't hang out in like Boston, like Boston. Like there's nothing there. But the outskirts get far more interesting, I mean, I know Dorchester and Mattapan and Roslindale, like that's all Boston too. But it's not like the Boston people think of, or like Somerville, or like North Cambridge or Malden, or Revere, Chelsea. Like there's a lot of cool shit when once you kind of get around it into the outskirts. That's kind of almost more where you see more real stuff, I feel like, and not real, that's not fair, but like I guess more interesting stuff to me in my experience. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, but I'd say that you could probably make that sort of argument with most cities, right? Like
Mhm.
the difference between what a tourist thinks the city is and what a local thinks the city is almost always different. I would say maybe with the exception of New Orleans, like probably most New Yorkers aren't hanging out in Times Square. You
Right.
know what I mean? They're not spending their Saturday afternoons at Ellis Island or the Statue of Liberty.
But
Like,
even like, I don't know, Lower East Side or like even like Harlem or something, like people hang out around there. Like those are still places to hang. It's like in I don't know. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know either. Yeah, I'm not sure either. But I mean, if you think about like Berkeley, NEC, like all of the music, not all, but the vast majority of the music education and like the very young music scene is all right pretty much in the heart of Boston.
Yeah. I mean they're just hanging out Wally's.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Dorcas Morton. I are you gonna give out the secrets or should it
What are
remain
the
in mystery?
secrets? Just that it's me?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
it.
the secret? Yeah,
That's
it's me. It's me. I mean, yeah, it's just it's the Dorcas Morton thing is it's just a it's just something to do, really. It's better than watching TV at night. No, it's for me. It's like a way. I think what it started as. The more I think about it, so I think what it started as is sort of like almost like a personal reaction against the music that I play professionally all the time. So my sort of style of trombone playing, to bring it back to trombone, is like I find myself playing in bands that are pretty high energy, pretty loud. Like even when we play gigs together in Kina, our styles contrast so well that it's almost like the horn section isn't two trombones. It's almost like different instruments in some ways because um, just the way that we play the instruments. And I so I find myself playing like very very high energy. It's a very physical activity playing a gig for me, especially like a Kotoko brass gig where I'm sort of front man. Um, and I really never play quieter than like a forte, probably. And I'm dancing around the stage, running around like a madman. So I think the Dorcas Morton thing sort of started as a reaction to that, where I wanted to just I wanted to spend time making music that was how I what I tell myself about it is it's music where nothing happens but you never get bored. Um, so it sort of started as that, and it's sort of morphed into a. Well, I don't know if it's changed, but it also the other real benefit of this music is that I think living one of the things about living in Boston is that people often musicians in particular they like do a term in Boston. So they'll live here for like 4 years and they're gone,
right.
right? So some of my best friends in the world are from Berkeley days, are specifically from a band I played in that we were talking about earlier at Berkeley called Endangered Speeches. Um, and pretty much everyone from that band, maybe everyone, has moved out of Boston, and there were 13 people in that band.
Right.
Um, but now it's also just like a really great way to continue to collaborate with these people, with friends of mine that are all over the country. And my rule is that if I invite someone to collaborate with me, I'm not allowed to tell them what I want them to do, and whatever they send me is the final mix. So I have to like really trust a person. So it's kind of just a good excuse also to like stay in touch with my close friends that are all over the country or all over the world and continue to make art together and you know not have that part of our relationship uh taken away since we're on opposite coasts or different continents or whatever.
Sure. And you've been doing this for a bunch of years. You've already released many albums as Dorcas Morton, right?
Yeah, yeah, or sort of like in the Dorcas Morton universe. So I have some friends that anytime I meet up with them, we record an EP. Like that's the goal.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll put those out under different names. But yeah, I think there's something like I think I've released maybe 11 albums or 12 albums, and I have three others that are like 90% done right now. I just am trying to iron out the final pieces of it, which always takes me way too long. because I really like I really like the creative bit and really don't like the end of it. But um, yeah, it's something really fun for me to do. It's been interesting during the pandemic working on that stuff because now I don't have the sort of high energy contrast to it anymore in music. So now
Hmm.
it's kind of like, I don't know, in some ways a little bit less appealing. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
as musicians, we're probably all going through some sort of phases of like being motivated during this pandemic to practice or to make art or to be creative, and then having other little dips in our creativity or whatever. So,
Sure.
but yeah, it's a fun project, and it's like it's nice to have something that's really not serious or low stakes. It's fake names. I put stuff out as head tapes, so it's all like the fake names also, so I can ask musicians that are trying to make a very professional career as, say, Michael the trombone player, to say like, well, give me that one stupid idea that you've always wanted to try, but you don't want to put out under your name because you don't want it to be associated with like this guy who does everything amazing. And then you hear like one song, he's just sampling like a chainsaw cutting firewood. It's like, what? Why? So it
Well,
also kind of just frees everyone up artistically to do whatever the fuck they feel like it.
I mean, I know you're being a little bit hyperbolic, but do you have any specific examples of that actual circumstance where somebody maybe wanted to remain anonymous so they could do something kind of outlandish?
I'm not being hyperbolic. Someone recorded chainsaw on a song who's one of the best clarinet and sax players I know. Uh,
Amazing.
I mean, no
Okay.
one no one asks to remain anonymous. That's part of it. If you're going to be in it, you have to have a fake name. So
Okay.
no one's real names are associated with it, even though it's not like a big secret. I mean,
Right.
there's probably 10 people that listen to it, and I would, if they asked who's playing this on this song, I'd tell them. But it's just kind of like this little cloak of anonymity that I think allows people to bring out their silly or wacky ideas or just kind of have fun with it.
Yeah, that's important. That kind of makes me think of like the some of the underground scene of Boston. Have you have you been involved with that in any capacity, like house venues or like the Boston Compass or any of that crowd or scene?
Not really. No. I mean, I definitely did like the house party thing in college, um, playing house parties with different bands or whatever. But no, I mean, I haven't really. From time to time, when I was living in JP, I'd do like they used to sometimes have shows in the basement of Deep Thoughts that I would go
Right.
to, or um, some stuff like that. The Dorcas thing, I never play the stuff live because I'll be playing like six different instruments, and I never designed the stuff to be played live. So it would be, I don't know. I've thought about it some, but it's never happened yet. So I don't really. I mean, the thing is, I don't really listen to music that sounds like the music I make very much.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
just
don't listen to
not that in that
podcasts.
scene. I probably listen to more podcasts than music.
Really?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anything's changed, but the last time we were talking, you were on a big kick with Idols and
Oh
Captain
yeah.
Beefheart. So,
Yeah. Yeah, Idols and Beefheart, sure. They've been my quarantine going a little crazy down the rabbit hole listening. I was surprised when I would look through that like Spotify, the end of the year Spotify stats thing that they give you, and it was like you're in the top 0.5 percentile of people that listened to Captain Beefheart this year, and I was like,
wow.
yikes! Is that gonna like, yeah, congratulations or
Congratulations. Yeah.
deepest sympathies? I'm not sure which is in order here.
That makes me think we were connecting a little bit about like Bruce Fowler and some of the like Frank Zappa, Captain Beefheart trombone stuff. Are there any trombonists in general that you've been excited about, and also any local trombonists that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, so sort of we'll start with just all-time trombonists. I think I say I have a pretty clear top three in no particular order, but Bruce Fowler always is just like his what he can just do on a trombone is amazing. And I sort of really have a deep admiration for that whole Zappa school that was some of the most technically proficient musicians in the world and probably could have got into some of the world's premier orchestras or commercial bands and decided, no, this wacky thing here is for me. Um,
Sure.
it's sort of like the perfect combination of virtuosity and goofiness, and it does and doesn't take itself too seriously. It's kind of everything at once for me.
Yeah.
Um, so, and then my like long time two other favorite trombone players are Josh Roseman, who I have just unending admiration for musically, and Fred Wesley
Yeah.
are my sort of heroes of trombone. Um,
I just had a dark thought. It's kind of cool that they're all alive.
it is cool that they're all alive. Yeah, for sure. For sure, right? Yeah, I guess it's like it's not Arthur Pryor is not my favorite trombone player.
Oh man.
He's good and dead. Um, yeah, that is cool. That is cool. I never thought about it like that. And locally, I mean, there's so many good local players in the scene too, which is always inspiring. Like, I mean, you for one, I have a lot of
Oh man.
admiration and respect for how you play the trombone and your dedication to the trombone and your technical facility on the trombone and writing and just how you play.
Thanks, man.
I'm always
Appreciate it.
I'm always in awe of, and I always feel like I have a lot to learn from. Um, I'm always also really in awe of Angel's playing, especially. I mean, his bass trombone playing is incredible, but what I like most is like even last night he'll just like be in his basement live streaming with like a cup of whiskey and some great salsa record and just ripping over it. So
Yeah.
I'm always really I've got a lot of admiration for how he plays. I mean, he just kind of seems like a master of everything to the point that it's like not fair.
Yep.
But it is fair because he works his ass off
Sure.
and
Of course.
he's brilliant. I'm
Mhm.
sure there are others that are not coming to mind right now, but yeah, there's a lot of good players in the scene, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got an interview with Angel coming up, so I'm pretty excited for that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the exciting things about this podcast for me. Because when I was starting to think about it and like think about all the trombonists who I could even like name, like people who, in my estimation, kind of contributed to the music scene in some way. There's so many, and it was a really diverse group of trombonists of totally different styles. People
Yeah,
doing totally different things, but amazing trombonists.
for sure. I mean, also like maybe we can consider him an honorary local. Hasn't been local in a while, but was for a long time. Is Quinn Carson. I look up to Quinn's playing. He's a
Yeah,
monster.
yeah, he
Um,
was. I talked to Quinn a while back. I think he said he was here for like maybe 10 years.
yeah, he was here for a long time. He was here for a lot. I mean, when he wasn't on the road, Boston was his home base for a long time. And
Yeah,
he's incredible. Great writer, great player.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, for all like the doom and gloom we had earlier about where are we all going to play. There's no venues. There's a shitload of talent, and that's inspiring.
yeah. Gonna. I think when there's an overabundance of talent, there needs to be an outlet. So as you said, I think we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
It's
I
just a
think
matter of
so.
how.
Even if it's just, you know, you'd asked me a question earlier. Sorry to take this back a little bit about this sort of
Sure.
DIY house party scene, and I've never really been involved in that. But one thing, another venue that's closed. God damn it. But one thing that has been really fun in sort of like a DIY way, because I feel like that doesn't happen in Boston as much as that happens in other cities. But the amazing there was an amazing place up until a few months back called Accurate Records in
Right.
Somerville that
Russ's space.
Russ ran, and that place is a really just a beautiful community space that we threw three parties with my band Kotoko Brass there, where we'd cook a bunch of cook music. Well, sure, why not? We'd
Cook
cook a bunch of
music, play food.
yeah, exactly. We'd cook a bunch of Ghanaian food and it was all a self-run event, and we'd have another band come in to open sometimes, or sometimes it would just be us, but those were really sort of beautiful, like musical family events where there'd be, any like almost anyone in the room you could point to, be like, hey, do you have your instrument? Come take a jam. There were so many great musicians. Or, hey, you want to lead a dance clinic here? A lot of people that know the dances that go along with that music. Um, so, yeah, also, I know he's not a trombone player, but Russ is a person I have huge admiration for. Like, he's been in the scene as it's changed so many times and has been a staple of that, and is such a great player and kind and amazing dude, and just a wealth of stories and entertainment.
Yeah. It's been really sad watching him like pack up all this stuff from Accurate Records and kind of posting it on Facebook, like, look at all this stuff I'm finding from over the years. And yeah, like you said, what a wealth of knowledge and experience, what a pillar of the scene.
For sure. I'm sure he'll find something else. Like,
Yeah.
Russ is one of those guys that's he's just creative and interesting. It's like space. It's saddening, but I think it's a new chapter, not the end of the book.
Yeah. All right, everybody, we're going to take a short break, so grab a snack, play some long tones, and we'll be back in a minute. Now, back to the show. I wonder, I mean, like you said, it's so expensive around here. Maybe it's like naive to be invested in politics, but I don't know if you just heard about Mayor Marty Walsh's nomination. Did you hear about that?
I did. Yeah. What is it for labor?
Yeah, Department of Labor in the Biden administration. So I don't know. Unlike most, like Boston mayors are known for staying for a long time, and he's been here for a while, but it looks like we're gonna have a new mayor, and likely gonna be Michelle Wu or Andrea Campbell. I've been following both of them, so
Okay.
they seem like both great progressive women, more progressive than we've had before. So I wonder if they would be interested in uh, trying to help facilitate creating a more sustainable music scene. Or yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, right? Hopefully. I think also, when we're sort of on the other end of the COVID thing, I think live music is going to have a huge resurgence because I think people miss it. Like it's there's going to be a big demand for it, right? People are
Yeah.
just going to want to go out, and they're going to want to like be with people and see live music happening. So I do have hope that I think it'll be a slow change, but I do have hope that that will happen. I mean, I know also Malden is hoping, there's this big new rehearsal space in Malden, and they're hoping to change this whole sort of stretch on I forget what the name of that street is, but right near the bike path there, they're hoping to make it into like, their vision is, let's make this stretch look like what in 10 years look like what South Burlington is now. So that whole
Wow.
stretch that's all like rehearsal spaces and breweries and DIY venues and stuff in Burlington,
Yeah.
they're hoping to make that whole stretch of like old warehouse buildings in Malden like that kind of scene. So hopefully those things
Wow.
will pop up, whether they're like in Boston Center or they're in Roslindale, or I think JP is probably priced out at this point, but
Yeah.
Places like that, Mattapan, Dorchester.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got hope, and I think I think it has to be a combination of musicians and politicians
Hmm.
that make that work. It can't be one or the other, right? Because what do politicians know about music venues and what do musicians know about legislation. Like, I'm sure
Right.
there is some crossover, but we need to work together.
Yeah. Except for Willie Cologne, but I probably shouldn't get into that.
Yeah, I'll just listen to him play trombone. That's all. I don't care what you say with your vocal cords. Just let me hear you talk with your trombone.
Oh man. Yeah. Um what are some of your favorite parts about living in Boston? Like, have you ever considered moving to another city? What keeps you here? Uh-oh.
Uh, what keeps me here? I have considered moving to another city. There's always 20% of my brain that's thinking, why the fuck am I not in New Orleans right now?
Mm,
It's just trombone heaven. Um, well, I like being close to family. I have a really nice community here. My wife has a great job here. I love Boston. Like I love Boston. I love New England.
mhm.
Um, like Celine was saying, like it is close to a lot of stuff too. Like I love Boston and the actual area of Boston, but I like being able to get up into the mountains.
Yep.
Um, I like, I mean, also I teach here, and I love where I teach, and I love my the organization that I teach
Yeah.
with. That's a huge factor.
Shout out to
Community.
Zoomix.
Shout out to Zoomix. Shout out to Zoomix, of course. Doing great work for a long time in East Boston and all over the Boston community. Um, yeah, I just have a life here. I like it here. Um, but I mean, there's always part of me that's daydreaming about being in New Orleans all the time.
Um what what's the fantasy about New Orleans? Like what could change here, or what do you prefer that's happening in New Orleans?
Oh, there's just, I mean, it's just music everywhere all the time. Like, music is so, probably more so than anywhere I've been anywhere in the world. Music is so deeply ingrained in that culture. And for whatever historical, societal reasons, trombone is sort of at the forefront of it. Like, I went down there one time I think I was there for 4 days. And just to amuse myself, I kept a running tally of how many guitar players I saw versus how many trombone players I saw, just to amuse myself. And at the end of 4 days, the count was 32 trombones to 3 guitars. And I love the style of playing. Like, I feel like I like the brass band culture of New Orleans is one of my major influences in how I play, and just like it just connects so deeply to like the power or energy of music to me. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I feel best when I'm on stage, and especially when I'm on stage, like really engaged in some heavy hitting trombone playing, and that's the sound, that's the scene. You can play music every night. Like, you can, it's more viable. You get paid less, or it's more on a, there's so much there that works on like the whole pay model seems different. It's a lot of passing the hat around at venues and stuff. So there's an art of working the crowd down there that we don't have as much of here. But it's just, I don't know, just there's some amazing players and great music, and just music everywhere. It's just, but also I'm a coward in the warm weather, and I would melt in the summer.
Yeah, I've never been, but I can't even imagine how hot it gets in the summer.
Yeah,
Yeah, just like scorching humidity.
I really like the snow. I
Yeah.
like cold weather, so I would miss that.
Yeah.
But I do try and go down there once a year. You know, I've got one of my closest friends lives down there and plays all the time, and so I had a band in Boston years ago called Jupitang, and we try and meet down there once a year to mostly party, but try and record some music too.
Yeah. What do you think it means to you as a professional musician to, like, what importance is touring? And I guess what I'm saying is, like, I think we could probably concur between us that not a ton of Boston musicians are touring, like doing national tours. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but like I don't feel like people usually go to Boston to pick out like these prime musicians for touring. They'll usually go to more major destinations And I wonder, you're talking about like 30 trombonists that you saw in 4 days in New Orleans. I guess I'm wondering, like, is there an almost anonymity as being a trombonist in New Orleans? I'm sure there's an incredibly tight knit community. I can't even imagine. But also like the viability of a career in music in New Orleans.
I mean, I think it depends what your career goals are, right? Like you can make enough money to live there, and there's depending on what like if we're talking like arena tours, like national, like big national tours. I mean, it depends on like the spirit of the band, right? So Solange put her band together in New Orleans, so
Yeah.
only accepted auditions from New Orleans people.
Hmm.
um but I mean, I think so much of that world is also like, just like any profession, when you get to that level, it's a lot of word of mouth and who you know too.
Hmm.
You
True.
know what I mean? Like it'll be like someone's like, "Oh, I need a trombone player." They found that whatever Stevie Wonder used this guy,
Right.
so they call that guy. Or
Wherever he is in the country, it doesn't really matter at a certain
it
point.
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters to get into that scene for sure, but then like once you're there, um, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not really in that position, so I'm not totally sure how it works. For me, the like the idea and like the lure of touring is like slowly waning as I get older. I would still do it. I love traveling. Like uh if music can fund me traveling around, great. I'm totally into it, but I've done some of it, and it's definitely a mixed bag. I've had some amazing experiences touring. I've had some really challenging experiences touring. Um, so yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm really, I just like to travel and I like to play music. So if in a if everything is working, if I like the music, like, and I like the people, and the financial situation is right, like I'm totally into it. Or I mean, I feel like most musicians have this sort of like checklist of when not to take a gig,
Yeah.
right? So it's like either the music has to be exactly what you want to be playing, like the perfect music for you personally, whatever that means to you, or uh, it has to be like travel or some amazing unique experience, or the hang has to be like exactly who you want to be hanging out with, right? And usually it kind of has to, or the money has to be great and it's just a good job, right? Which is like wedding band stuff. It's like I don't think anyone would play wedding band shit for free, but it's a good job.
Hmm.
So I've had certain gigs where it's like, yeah, I'll do that gig for free, because when the hell else am I gonna go to, you know Republic of Georgia or whatever?
Sure. Yeah. Um, I want to rewind a little bit and talk about something sort of tangentially related to Zoomix, which for those of you out there who don't know about Zoomix, it's a pretty incredible organization here in Boston. It's been around since what, the early '90s, right, Brian? I think Madeline started in
25
'90.
years, I think. 90, yeah, 99. Geez, I should know this off the top of my head. I think
Oops.
it's been around 25 years.
And so the founder, Madeline, she runs a music school, and she she pays professional, amazing teachers at Zoomix to give lessons to kids who can't afford it. So the lessons are subsidized, I think usually through grant funding. So the teachers are paid well, and students who normally wouldn't have access to really high quality lessons um, have access and can get really great music education. Anyways, aside from Zoomix, I'm I'm feeling sort of compelled to ask you about what what is the intersection for music and justice for you? I think it's probably important to you. I don't think we've ever really talked about it super in depth, but what does that mean for you?
I mean, For me, yes. For me, it's very important. Um, it's also an interesting thing, especially if we're talking about it in terms of Zoomix and in terms of my involvement at Zoomix. I think before I have anything to say about that, I have to acknowledge that I am essentially the uh, poster boy of privilege in a lot of ways, right? I check all of the boxes. I'm a straight, white, American, middle class male. Like that's everything on the checkbox, right? So I think that it's really important for me to like approach any of these conversations with a sense of humility and willing to shut the hell up and listen. Um, I think for me, I think what I can bring, especially when we're talking with young people, is I think that, I'm talking about maybe fourth grade through high school. I genuinely believe that if people develop a deep respect and love for music that comes from all places in the world, that it becomes increasingly hard to be close-minded, and it becomes increasingly likely that you treat others with the knowledge that there are um exactly how do I put it, that everyone has equal value, and that value might be distributed in different things. I'm talking about their talent, right? Their artistic expression, whatever that may be, that everyone from every corner of the world has beauty to bring, right? And I think that if students really feel that, right, you can tell them it all day, but it has to be something that you've internalized. And I think my biggest attribute is, this is sort of maybe roundabout, my biggest contribution to this justice thing can be, I just get so much joy from music. It is a thing that brings me such, probably the purest happiness that I experience in my life is being on stage and everything clicking. And I think that if we can give people the opportunity to find that feeling, uh, it just uplifts you as a person in every way, right? And that feeling might not be from music. It might be from art. It might be from computer programming. It might be from volunteering at a soup kitchen. It might be from anything, but just this trying to find situations in life, especially as you get older, where you feel just unencumbered joy. And I feel like if I could kind of help people navigate toward finding that in their lives, then that sort of indirectly um, addresses your question about justice in music. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's a beautiful statement you made. That's a really nice intention. Um,
But I mean,
it's
you see some fucked up stuff too.
hmm,
Like even within the music scene, like I was on a Kotoko Brass gig one time that we were on. Actually, this was like right after they changed. It used to be called Yaki Way. Now it's called Jersey
right.
Street, right outside Fenway. So Kotoko Brass, we do like we have this gig where I don't know, maybe 4, 8. I can't really remember, but certain amount of time in the summer they close off that stretch right outside Fenway Park, and it's like a block party for people that have tickets to the game. And so they have a band there, and they hire us. I don't remember how we got that gig, but it's pretty unique. It's like the world's worst load in and load out, but it's a cool gig, built-in audience, and it's a lot of fun. So we were playing this gig. Maybe it was like the second time we were playing it, and we were setting up. We had to bring our whole own sound system, and that band has
Hmm.
about a million drums, and they only give us one parking spot. It's like a whole thing.
Serious?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Um, but it's fun. It's a fun gig. It's like paid
Yeah.
rehearsal, one of those gigs, and you can kind of do anything you want. Then you can watch a baseball game, so that's kind of cool. Um, so one of the gigs we are setting up, and we all wear the same shirt. We all wear the Kotoko Brass T-shirt for that gig, just because there's so many people that have, no one's there for us. They're there for the Red Sox or for whoever the Red Sox are playing. I guess if they're treasonous assholes. No, I'm just kidding. Um, um, so we're setting up for one, And the security guard walks right past me, walks right past our then time sax player, Andrew Foliano, right past my brother, and right to Taliwa, who's sitting on the steps. Just it was cold, so he'd already set up his bass, or his bass amp, so he's just sitting on the steps trying to warm up, get his fingers warm.
Just to
We're
jump
all
in,
wearing
Brian, his brother, and Andrew are all white guys, and Tully was a black guy.
yes, exactly. Thanks for that clarification. So the security walks right past us. He's playing a bass, wearing the same shirt that we're all wearing, and he goes, "I'm gonna have to see your credentials." Which he had his credentials on his leg, right? We all get a sticker they make us wear, and so Andrew, to his credit, saw this happening and walked right up and said, "Hey, why the fuck are you talking to him? Like, why the fuck did you just walk past all of us and you walk right to him?" And he said, "We're not answering any of your questions. You go get yourself a manager. Like, go get your supervisor, because that's fucking ridiculous. Like, we're all wearing the same shirt. The dude's holding a bass. Like, clearly he's in the band, right?" And so, yeah, the guy went and he got a supervisor, and we explained to him what happened. We were like, "Hey, this can't happen. Like, this can't happen. You can't walk past all of us, no questions. We're all fine. Walk up to Taliwa and start grilling him." And so, they sort of reluctantly and half-assedly apologized, and it didn't happen again. But the best, like, sort of kicker on the story was Taliwa, who I have just so much admiration for, both musically and as a human being. Just when the guy, right before the guy walked away, he looked the security guard square in the eyes and just said, "It's not Yaki Way anymore." And the guy had to just walk out. So I mean,
That's
you
amazing.
definitely you see some shit, and and I have big respect to Andrew for seeing what was going down in that situation, and hopping right in very forcefully. Um, you know,
Yeah.
it was troubling.
I I recently had an interview with this woman named Vicky Garcia. She's an incredible trombonist in the classical world, and um we were talking a little bit about sexism that she's faced as a trombonist, as a musician. And I was saying to her, I appreciate, like, I want to hear your perspective about um sexism that you faced, but also why should that question be unique to you, Vicky? And she was saying, yeah, Michael, you should ask everybody that. So thanks to Vicky, I want to ask you, what's your experience, if any, been with sexism in music?
Huh. I mean, on a very personal level, like things affecting me, not like just things I've seen. I
No,
don't
probably
think
like
I.
not necessarily to you, but just like what you've witnessed or experienced, if anything.
I mean, I definitely play with way more men than women, and I'm sure that in some degree is is reflective of some maybe more like broader institutional sexism in music, in the music industry, and sort of like long-standing, um, stupid and arbitrary stereotypes about which genders should and shouldn't play which instruments. Um, yeah, I mean, so I think definitely a lot of the music that I have played is very male dominant. Thinking through it, with often singers or front people being women and the rest of the band being men. Um, and I'm sure that that's all reflective, to what degree I'm not totally certain, of some sort of institutional sexism that's baked in. That being said, I mean, I think two of the greatest trombone players that I've known in Boston one as like a student at the same time as me at Berkeley, and then one as a teacher when I was at Berkeley. They're both women, like one of the best bass trombone players I've ever heard. Robin Ami. I'm not, can't remember exactly how to pronounce her last name,
Wow, I've never heard of
but
her.
I think she moved to Texas or something. But she was an absolute beast of a bass trombone player. She was a teacher of mine for a semester there, trying to
Wow.
wrap my head around bass trombone. And then when I was there, Aubrey Logan was also there, who's an incredible trombone player and singer.
Oh, okay, cool.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm like I acknowledged earlier, like I have a lot of sort of privilege in this world and this scene, and so yeah, I'd have to think a little bit more about that to maybe have a more thoughtful answer for you.
Have you ever witnessed any like chauvinism from musicians towards female musicians? Like, have you ever seen a man treating a woman with kind of malintention, being abusive?
Um, Definitely some maybe, I mean, not abusive on in a physical way, but definitely like what you might call microaggressions, or just acting kind of creepy, like looking at an amazing female lead singer as more of like a not as more of like a I don't want to say like a sex object, but becoming like really obsessed with them in a physical way that just feels creepy or strange. And I've never seen anything that I can recall off the top of my head that's just like outright on its face, like holy shit, that's disgusting. Um, there were definitely with endangered speeches. Our lead singer was a very interesting, uh, incredible musician. Wrote every note that everyone in that band played. Um, she definitely had some people that got a little too like obsessed with her, but she also is like a very strong, confident person that had no qualms telling people to fuck off. Um, yeah, I've heard stories in the wedding band world of crazy shit happening,
Do you mind
but I
sharing?
haven't. Well, I haven't seen any of the things firsthand. Um, I think this is a trombone podcast, but Gail MacArthur has some wild stories of. She's a sax player, Scottish sax player, that can also talk shit with the best of them. She's got some wild stories to tell about even playing in Scotland as some blues guy.
Is she in
Um,
Boston? I've never heard of her before.
yeah, she teaches at Berkeley. She teaches arranging at Berkeley.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
she's a great tenor player, and she plays. I play with this guy that has like most of the wedding function band accounts on Nantucket, named Perry Rossi. So she's been playing with Perry for years and years, and when he gets a gig that has like a full horn section, I usually go down and play trombone with him. So I also played with her actually in college. I was playing in the James Brown ensemble, and they brought Fred Wesley in for a concert, so I got to play with Fred for a night.
Wow.
And she played in the horn section for that. I think because she was also just like, wait, Fred's here, I teach here, I'm
I
playing.
I gotta play in this
Yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. Um, I think you were talking about like sort of systemic things that are like systemic things at play for sexism, and I'm wondering like maybe it's maybe not so much stuff that's like written in stone somewhere, but just kind of societally or culturally played out in our interactions. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about ways that people who are trying to advocate for, I guess, marginalized genders, whether it's women or trans folks or whatever, like ways that we can try and step up and call out bullshit, like what that means to you, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, you mean like on just on an individual person to person level. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, if you, I think like going back to that story about Fenway Park, like the way that Andrew just stepped up. I mean, you see bullshit, you call it out. I think that is probably usually a good thing, although it might also be like, I don't need anyone else speaking on my behalf. You know what I mean? Why do you? So I'm not really sure. Like, I would like to ask that question to someone that comes from, to someone that has experienced that, and I would like, if you can report back to me on the answer of that, of what what to do, how to act, how to behave to be the most helpful person I can be in those situations. I would like to know that information. I'm not totally certain. I mean, I think that I generally think that the world is really complicated, and making big blanket statements of here's what you do is like possible or useful or helpful at all, because there might be, like, there's a big difference from a person like Mary Letta that does not need any man jumping in to say anything on her behalf ever. Like, she'd be quicker to punch a person in the face than I would be. Uh Versus maybe someone that does feel, maybe you know, an 18-year-old student, a 19-year-old student that's just brand new in the scene, that feels like they don't want to let anyone down, to maybe find their place in this music scene. You know, I think you treat both of those situations differently. Um, so I don't know. I have trouble with like a what to do narrative, just because I think everything is, the world's fucking complicated and confusing and insane. That yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is any one answer. I think we all navigate it differently, but I think it is important for us to talk about, to at least start that conversation and to think about, especially for us
Definitely.
privileged folks.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I mean, the two things that I think can be blanket statements is uh, try and operate with a genuine kindness and a genuine humility, to, you know, try and bring kindness and warmth to the world, but know that I don't know shit and I have a lot to learn from a lot of people, and to shut up and learn in those situations.
Yeah.
Ask interesting questions, ask probe, just like you're doing, right? Ask interesting questions, and then listen, see what we can learn.
Yeah. I was wondering if, as a fellow educator, and I've personally witnessed some of what you do at ZoomX because I've been there, but I'm wondering if you could sort of
You've
share.
taught those kids.
Right.
You've
I mean, I know a lot of those kids, but I'm wondering if you could maybe share here on the podcast what that might look like. I mean, when you're talking about systemic level, I mean, I think the sexism that kids are facing is probably happening way earlier than getting out into the professional world. It's probably happening when they're, middle school, high school, even earlier, honestly. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what does that mean for you as an educator? Because I know you have a lot of young girls that you're working with, children.
yeah, yeah. Um, what does that mean? Is it? I mean, yeah, right. I think the Latin ensemble, which I coach, it's been predominantly female for years. Um, but I think that's awesome. I think it's incredible. Like, I think that, I don't know. I try to. It really, like, I to me, they're, that's a cop out answer. I mean, I was gonna say, to me they're just people, right? Which is true, I guess, to me, but that's also like a cop out, stupid bullshit answer. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think in some ways music is this, if we do it right as educators and as performers, music is this thing that speaks a language that's kind of its own, and it's we can communicate not only just music, but those values of justice and equality and kindness through music, through creating a space where everyone can have the same experience and be treated the same way for either their successes or their failures. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, not. I mean, I haven't really, in my teaching, in my having been at Zimix for 10 years, maybe. 9 years, something like that. I haven't really encountered that, but I think also because Zumix is very like ahead of the curve of progressive education and youth development. So this is a thing that we've been talking about literally my whole time at Zumix is and so what that means is within at least the space of those four walls, institutionally, it's not as big of a problem as it might be institutionally within society at large, or BPS, or whatever the case may be.
Hmm. Yeah. Cool.
But I don't feel like that totally addressed your question. I guess I'm like not. These are really interesting questions that I feel sort of maybe slightly reluctant to answer, only because I do care very deeply about justice and equality, and not having, I don't know. Yeah, it's so complicated, but I do think that like with a lot of it too is I'm teaching a lot one-on-one. So a lot of these issues don't come up one-on-one, right? Like especially for like a fifth grader, it's like I I'm trying to get them ready to record a video to do a recital over Zoom for a half an hour once a week where they're supposed to be playing something that's a little over their head. It's like I just don't really have the luxury of having these conversations with a lot of my students. Um, but some I have, I mean, probably my most accomplished trombone student and the student I've had for the longest. Um, is a really great young woman that goes to Winthrop and is an incredible trombone player. So I think a lot of my students at Zumix, their experience and upbringing, I'm just talking strictly in a musical context, is so different than mine, because mine was so centered around public school band program, um, right, and doing all the like regional, statewide festivals, that kind of shit, and then having like a ska band or a punk band or whatever that you play trombone in a ska band or a jam band or whatever that, and then having your own kind of like there's the school scene and then there's the out of school scene. And these kids, a lot of their music exposure is just through Zumix. That's it.
Mm.
Right? They don't have band at their public schools. They're not like there doesn't seem to be a really strong youth. There's a lot of great youth players, but it doesn't seem like they're like booking local Elks Lodge places for shows like we used to do when we were kids.
Right.
So I think the experience that a person gets when their whole musical upbringing is just through the lens of Zumix is very, very different than mine, that I'd like be reluctant to even compare them.
Yeah. I think we should probably start to wrap it up a little bit soon, but before we go, you told me about one of your worst gigs. I was wondering if you could tell me about some of your best gigs in the city.
In the city.
Yeah,
in
some
the
of your
city.
best like local gigs.
I mean, yeah. The two that pop into mind right off the bat are the Juve Parade. That's just such a special fun. Like musically, it's wild. It's the only gig of the year that I play a P-bone for, because I'm on the back of a thing that stops and starts, and we may or may not be drinking rum in the evening before we get on the boat, or not the boat. I don't even know what the hell it was, a trailer. But that one was really special musically. There's just so much life in it, and getting to play with Michael and Glenn, who are two of my sort of musical and personal role models. And now with Glenn passing, it's even a fonder memory.
Yeah, sure.
Those years of doing that. That band was called the Happiest Band Alive. So we had T-shirts made up every year for the Happiest Band Alive, and those ones, and then more recently the Kotoko Brass Fufu parties, were real highlights. I mean, it had the vibe it had such a strong family vibe, and the music was great, and it was just such a nice hang. uh, there's just a warmth in the building, and the music was raging, and um, those two jump to mind right off the bat. Some travel experiences with a Boston artist. Got to do some touring there, and that was had its ups and downs, but some of the traveling was really incredible. So I know that's not
Mm.
Boston, but it all stems from Boston.
You're talking about you're
Um,
touring with Ayoka.
yeah, so doing some touring with Yoko, who was she was a real staple in the scene in the early in like the Lizard Lounge poetry slam poetry scene.
Yeah.
And then wrote some music that, by whatever strange way, YouTube and the internet work, got really famous in like
Mm.
Germany and Turkey in particular. I think Greece too, maybe. But we could play at the Mission on Mission Hill, and there'd be like 4 people in the audience, and then we could go to Germany and play for 3,000, or go to
Yeah, that's
Georgia and play for 5,000.
it's so weird how that happens.
It's
So
very
strange.
strange. But some of those experiences, getting to tour in Turkey and Georgia and um, Tunisia, and those were interesting, very interesting.
Yeah. Um yeah, it's
Oh, one
pretty
other.
yeah, yeah.
I thought of one other is the which is a really really special event, is the Crash Fest that they do at House
Oh
of
yeah.
Blues.
Yeah.
Crash
It's been a
Fest is
great
like
thing.
it's been a great thing. It's like, I think it's probably like everyone that you and me both know is in that building. It's
Feels like
just
a
like you just
family
walk around.
reunion.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, and there's just great music everywhere, and it's a really kind of beautiful mix of. I think the World Music Crash Arts, it's done great things for like the kind of um, global music. I sort of hate that term, but
Right.
the that scene in Boston, I think that they've done a lot of really good for that scene in Boston, and I love that they have been very mindful to incorporate both local and international acts and national acts in at Crash Fest. That one, um, I played 2 years in a row, and it's just a blast.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's pretty it's funny to me. I was thinking how like I kind of agree. Some of the my fondest memories of gigging in town have been the kind of like homey, self-produced kind of events at like non-traditional venues. Um, like you were talking about with the foo parties with Kotoko, and I was there, so and I know that they were really amazing. They were really special events, and I think that is
Why
a
do you
kind
think that
of
is?
was I think it yeah I think it's yeah what does it mean to have really great events at like a non-traditional space, not a formal venue, versus a venue, and like what does that space provide? I guess there's kind of like a lack of pretense or something. I don't know. It's like, oh, this isn't some place where we're expected to drop all of our money on booze and tickets. And I mean, like you still bought tickets and there was still food and stuff, but the vibe and the it just felt inherently different. There was like a different reason for going. It felt familial. And even though like there was fans, it wasn't like only like immediate friends and family versus like strictly fans who are not at all. Like it's kind of a loose line between the two, but
Sure.
it felt very homey and warm. It was a good sized space. There's plenty of room for dancing and food and drink, and it was very informal. I think like I don't know. I guess there's a charm to playing clubs, but it's like, you go to this place and there's just these gruff workers who don't really give a shit. And it's just like, it smells gross. It smells like old booze and the floor is sticky. And I guess there's kind of a charm to that, but also it's just kind of like, it's not inspiring. But if you go to a beautiful space like Accurate Records, like this really cool sort of old space with these nice wooden floors and tall ceilings, and it's like everyone's warm and friendly and smiling, and I don't know. It's just kind of a different vibe. It's not the beehive with the fucking guys with their earpieces telling you like stop dancing. Like fuck
The Men in
that.
Black.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, and this can happen too in club. I think that's why Bulls was so special, even though that was a club. Is I think that like, sort of the most special gigs are the one where it feels like the barrier between musician and audience has been broken.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
So like that can happen on festival sets. Like that can happen even at a big room like House of Blues. You know,
Yeah.
if the energy is right, and if the
Man,
that
Angelique
can
Kidjo, she was running out into the audience, you know?
right, totally. I've only had the opportunity to play that main stage at House of Blues once, but even there, that felt like a special gig. Maybe just because the audience was big, but maybe because it was like there did seem to be these different. I don't know. It's almost like the energy that you come at it with. I know that's a very sort of like hippy dippy thing to say, but like if you come at it with that energy of like, oh, me as entertainer, I'm nothing too special. Like the audio, like we're all kind of the same thing. I just happen to be the one that plays the instrument, but other than that, it's all kind of whatever. I don't know. It just makes things feel more communal, more together, more fun. I guess
Yeah.
feels less.
Yeah.
It feels less like you're in the service industry, and it feels more like you're doing this thing to try and chase that feeling, like the first time you played on a stage and you got off stage and just felt like you could go run a marathon.
Yeah, definitely. I think the intention, the sort of communal thing, when the right audience is with the right performers, and there's like a really happy sort of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about like, playing some other times, and it's like maybe you're hired by the venue. I won't say who, but hired by some venue, and it's like the people go to the venue because they like it. And it's like, oh, this is a cool spot to be. I heard this is a cool bar, a cool place. I'm gonna go get a couple drinks. And I heard that there's usually cool music, but they're not there because like they're excited about you. They're not there to like commune with you necessarily. It's just kind of like a crapshoot. Like, oh, it may or may not be a good audience. Whereas something like Crash Fest, where even though it is like a pretty big venue, it
I mean,
still
it's a
manages
huge
to
event. Yeah.
yeah, but it still manages to have a more homey feel. There's kind of more intimacy. The appreciation is kind of different between fans and performers.
Yeah, of course, because people are coming there for the music. People are
Right.
coming there to see those bands. And I think with that event in particular, anyone that goes to that event is a person that is very open minded by nature, right?
Yeah.
Because you could walk from room to room to room and see like whatever, like a crazy Scottish band, and then walk into the next room and there's African music, and then walk into the next room and there's like uh, Red Barat. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it sort of attracts a certain type of audience, and like a club like the one you were describing attracts a certain kind of audience, and then you get a whole different energy when you go down the Cape and play like broy beach bars. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, so it's like I played gigs down there as like the only non-Caribbean person in the band, and have people come up to me after and say, "Well, that was all right, but you're not a real reggae band because I didn't hear any Sublime." Right. So you hear it's just different.
Wow.
It's different things everywhere.
Oh my
Which
god.
is that's my before we go, that's maybe my second favorite comment that anyone's ever said to me as a trombone player.
You
But the best comment, the absolute pure gold comment. This was a genuine attempt at a sincere compliment from a woman at the end of a show. The show I'd only played trombone. I didn't play keyboard. I didn't play anything. No trumpet. Nothing else. Just trombone. This woman comes up to me afterward and she goes, "You play trumpet as good as Kenny G." I was just like, "Man, that is beautiful. Thank you so
Oh.
much."
Those are those amazing comments that we get sometimes.
I've never heard a better one.
Yeah, that's a triple whammy.
Yeah, everything about it's wrong and it feels so right.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, anything else you want to share before we call it for today?
No, man, just thanks for doing this. It's really cool. This is like it's a great conversation. Always nice to catch up. And also, just to let our audience here know, stay on the lookout. We've got a duets album coming at some point when we're
Hmm.
allowed to be in the same room as people. We've got some really cool duets coming out. I don't know
Original.
what
We've been writing
original.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just it's nice to connect, and thanks for doing this too. Just like for the scene, I'll be excited to listen to other people's interviews and other people's perspectives, and to learn from other people's takes on trombone in Boston and all that.
Yeah, I mean, you said you actually listen to podcasts, so maybe
Oh
maybe
yeah.
you'll listen to this one.
Oh, I will for sure, man. I'll hit that subscribe button.
Oh man, thanks. All right, Brian, I'll catch you later for sure. And thanks for your time. Thanks for coming out.
Of course, love you, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, see you, Brian. Thanks.
Peace.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Comments, questions? Send me an email at bosbonespodcast@gmail.com. That's BOSBONES podcast@gmail.com. Or follow me on Instagram, YouTube, or Spotify. Learn more about Brian at brianpaulding.com. Trombone Icon by Gregory Montini from thenounproject.com. Special thanks to Celine and Jeffrey. Bos Bones theme written by me, Michael Prentke. Bos Bones theme recorded and arranged by Brian Paulding, Dorcas Morton. Intermission music by Kotoko Brass, Abomi. Outro music by Kinazore Funamamana. Again, please follow at Bos Bones on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, or visit at michaelprentke.com/Bos Bones. Thanks for listening. See you next time.